Hi, everyone. Who's sharing screen? Hi, Olga.
It's me. I mean,
So good. You're welcome to. I was just like, ooh.
I'm
I,
just trying to. Mm.
so you guys, actually, I'm logging, or I was trying to log in early, but I'm still trying to battle with my GitHub. For some reason, it's refusing me ability to add people. So just hold on 5 more minutes. Since I'm online with you, I'm just going to try one more time. All right. That's why I'm quiet. If you want to ask me questions, you can, but I'm not going to share my screen because I'm trying to figure out why GitHub is not being nice to me today. Okay, so give me a second and I'll try to work this out.
Ellie, am I still sharing the screen,
Uh,
or I'm more
no,
respectful
no,
now?
no, I don't mind. I was just like, I thought I jumped into somebody else's screen.
It
I was
swear to God, it's not intentional.
like, so no, as soon as I said you clicked something and you didn't share anymore.
I don't know how to see it without it. Am I clicking share the screen or join audio? It's like, how do I get to the video otherwise?
Um, so you should have like next to your mute button, a start video button on the bottom,
Ah,
bottom left.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You know what? Since you guys
Awesome.
want to have something to entertain you, let me share my video. So just give me a second. I'm going to battle with my GitHub. So just one moment, because I'm logged in and I keep trying to add people, but it keeps asking me for a password, which is correct, but it's then not adding anybody. So 1 second. Projects. All right. Is public? Yeah. Okay, let's try it again. So I'm just gonna go down the list and add everybody who sent me there. And you guys can check. If you sent me your user name, check if it works this time, because before it wouldn't let me add stuff. Um,
Hi, Ellie and everyone.
hi.
So I sent the email ID. Is that good enough?
Where did you send it? Just to my email?
No, to your Slack on the
Yeah.
Slack.
So I'm trying to add you guys right now. So maybe third time's the charm. Or at least it's a slow process.
So what's the address you want us to send to you? Is email address or is
Slack. You can just Slack it to me right now.
that right? Is it email address or is it some other things?
So your GitHub
User-
username. I mean,
username.
you can use your email and GitHub if you know what it is as well.
Okay, so it's a GitHub username, right?
Yeah. So Elena, I am not able to add you. So the QWERTY 7 that you sent me.
Yeah.
It's not.
And it doesn't work?
No. I tried several times.
This is my username on.
You want to just send me your email? I'll try by email.
Okay. Sure.
Ellie, could you able to add me, Paulina, to that?
Yeah, I'm gonna try right now. So hold on. Find your GitHub.
gmail.com. Okay.
There we go. Copying it. Copying it.
Maybe I sent Gmail.
Okay, I found Paulina.
Oh, I probably should I send in general? I sent in your.
No. I mean, if whichever, as long as I. Okay. Trying to add. Found Olga. Go back to Elena. I added Daniel Yu. You can check yours if yours is working. I found Elena, or at least I found your email, so check that. Inna, I'm going to add you. Oops, not letting me. You guys, I know I'm not going in order, but I'm going in order of my Slack. So as Slack sends them to me, I look for you. I don't know. It seems to be working, but last time it seemed to be working as well, and people weren't getting invites. So
worked for me. I accept an invitation.
Oh, okay, good. So it's working today. Yeah, I had to reset my password completely. So hopefully it's now going to work. You know what? Let me share my screen because, well, I don't know. How do you guys feel about others seeing your username in GitHub? Are you okay with it, or? No, it's okay because I'm doing Slack. You guys are sending me private messages. Never mind. I'll just keep going this way. Just bear with me. You can't see my screen for a bit, but trying to protect everyone's privacy. Let's see. Found Oksana. Okay, next person. Olga, I already added you. Polina, I added you. Sonia, I'm adding you now by email. So I'm assuming it's going to come to your email. Tatiana. I don't have your username. So send it to me if you have it. Okay, Val. Okay. Almost there. Almost there. Oksana, I thought I already sent you an invite. Did you not receive it? Here, let me try again. Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen now. It looks like 2 of you already received your invitations and accepted them.
Oh, sorry, I was late. I'm not sure if you added mine.
I'm gonna show who I added so far right now. So let me just, I'm sharing my screen. And then if I have to add more people, I will stop sharing my screen again so I can see your guys' stuff. Hold on a second, give me just a moment. What are we doing here? So it looks like I have 2 collaborators and 6 invitations. Here, the invitation's still pending. Wait, why is there 5 being shown if there's, I guess one of you just accepted, but I'm assuming if you guys accepted, you already know you're there. So these are the invitations I sent out.
Ellie, where do we accept it?
In your email, I'm assuming.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Maybe. Or if you just log into GitHub, you should have a button saying that you were invited to collaborate and you just say accept.
Yeah, it was redirected to the GitHub page. There, I accepted it.
If you just log into GitHub, it might be fine as well.
Alec, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, thank you. Hi, this is Tanya. So you asked to remind you during the session about a couple of topics that I wanted you to address. I just sent you through Zoom chat.
Okay, perfect.
Can you see it?
I am going to open my chat right now.
Uh-huh.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's see. Okay. So let me just, I'm gonna stop sharing for one more second, you guys, because there's a couple more people who sent me their stuff. So let me switch to sharing something like PyCharm, and that way you guys won't see my Slack. Okay, let's see. Okay. Actually, Tatiana, I don't think I have your link. You want to send me your
Yeah, just a second. Yeah, let me send you my. Just a second.
I have 17 participants, you guys, but I only have 9 collaborators. So some of you are definitely not there yet, which is fine if you don't want to, use GitHub or you don't want to collaborate. But yeah, it's just something to point out. Okay, on that note, let's pop open PyCharm. During the Friday office hour, I was actually asked a lot of questions about GitHub, some more. And so what I did is I modified the README file. And so now if you go to GitHub and you, let me just share my whole desktop again. If you go to the actual page, the README, it contains like the steps, what you need to do. So because I know there was only like 5 people during the office hour, let me kind of go over what each one of these commands does.
Ellie, how to go to GitHub and accept your invitation? I'm in front of the GitHub and I cannot see the invitation there.
The invitation.
Yeah.
So if you sent me your username.
Yeah, I sent you username and
when you log in, it should just give you like a button right when you log in to your account. Like maybe go to your profile. Maybe if you click on your profile, you should be able to see it.
When I push the button and give me 404.
No, I don't see popular.
You have link on a mail. Maybe so go
it
through
might
this
be an
link.
email, right?
No,
So when I go to
repository,
repository,
okay, yeah. Okay, I got it. Yeah, you send me email. I found the email.
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Thank you.
It could be in multiple places, but for me, usually when I get an invitation, I go to repositories. There's like an extra button like here somewhere, and it basically says you've been invited. Would you like to accept? And I click here.
I go to that. I don't see that button.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I got an email from email.
Then.
Yeah, thank you.
Then email. Okay, but let me kind of go over this. So just to, you know what? Let me do it this way. Let me do it this way. One sec. So I'm just gonna kind of talk about GitHub a little bit more and Git overall, not necessarily GitHub because Bitbucket is also same. It's Git. So you guys already know about Git clone, right? So Git clone followed by URL. This is used to copy remote repository to local disk, right? You guys ready?
Sorry.
All right. So number 1, right? So another one that we already talked about is git add, right? And git add is used to add excuse me, changed files, right, to your local Git index for tracking. So in other words, you can change a lot of things, you can create a lot of new files, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to commit them into Git, right? So you're just working in your PyCharm, and you might have pasted an image or taken a screenshot of an image and you saved it into your project, or you might have opened up a random file just to, you know, take notes. But it's your own personal file. You don't want it part of Git. It just happens to be in your project, so you don't lose track of it. So if you don't want it in Git, then don't do git add on that file. It's as simple as that. So if you don't say git add on a specific file, then Git doesn't know anything about it. Git will continue reminding you that, hey, I see this file and it's not part of my index. What do you want to do with it? But until you say git add the name of that file, it will continue. It will not track it, essentially. Now, if you don't want Git to continue reminding you that that file is there and you need to add it or you need to do something about it, you can add it to that git ignore file, right? So if you don't want Git to ever track a file for changes, right, add it to .git ignore file. And that's what we saw last week, right? Last week, somebody asked me, what is this file? And we kind of opened it up, and there was a lot of stuff in there. Now, I didn't actually create this file. This file was automatically created by GitHub, but it contains some of the most common, most known combinations of extensions and folders and, you know, all kinds of patterns that people usually like to put inside their git ignore. All right. So for example, like build, right, and egg. Egg is actually when you install a project, it generates this. Dist, right? If you build something, it creates a distribution folder or build. So there's a lot of things here. I did not put them here, but they were when I created this project in GitHub, it was automatically created. So this thing was automatically created. And what we did last week is we just added this, right? And this file is generated by our IDE. So it's basically all the settings from our IDE. Anytime we reposition a window or a tab or change how, you know, our IDE looks, so we can change the style, right? We can make the screen black and the letters red and however we want to do it. It gets stored into this .ide location, and we don't usually want that in GitHub. So we don't want to track that. That actually has something to do with our IDE, not with our project, not with our source code. And in fact, if we did check it into GitHub and another developer pulled it, it would actually mess with their IDE settings. So they wouldn't be a very happy camper about that. So that's why we added this. But that's what happened, right? So let's keep going. So then we have a git commit command, right? Now git command has an additional -m option if you want to include a message as part of that same command. If you don't include -m, it will still open up VI for you, right, or Vim, and then you'll be able to enter the message there. Because I'm not a very big fan of writing large commit messages or having to deal with VI, I usually use the -m command. That will allow me to enter, you know, a simple commit message like what am I committing, and then make a commit all in one go, right? So there you go. So this is to save changes locally. All right, after that we have our git push, right? This is if we want to publish our committed changes to the remote repo. All right, so in other words, if we do git push, we are going to see that branch and all of the commits in that branch in our GitHub website. So we're going to see them. Now, all of that made sense last week, right? Everybody was cool with that. The next question was, okay, Ellie, now that you put new changes into the master branch, how do we get them, right? How do we get them? Now, if you're not creating your own personal branch, if you're still working out of master, or you're you're just pulling my changes and you have no desire ever to share your changes with me, right? You're just working with your own personal with a copy of my code each time, not changing anything, not trying to push anything out yourself. Then you would just make sure that you're on the master branch. So you would say git check out, not check out, check out master, right? And this is optional, excuse me, optional to ensure you are on the local master branch or on the local copy of the master branch, right? So this is optional. Because if you're already on master, obviously you don't have to check out master again. You're already there. And then right after that, you would just do git pull. Whoops, why is it capitalizing? Git pull. To get all of the new changes downloaded to your local disk, right? So far so good. But if you are making changes to master, or if you are working from your own branch, what I would recommend you do is git fetch. All right. Now git fetch is what I have over here in that README, right, that I showed you. All right, you guys see it? Git fetch. So git fetch does something very simple. It makes a query to find out if something was changed, not what was changed, but if something was changed. So it's basically, let's pretend that we have a large commercial repo. So we're in an actual company, not in the class, but in the company. And we have 40 developers working and creating changes, right? So by doing git fetch, we would find out about any new branches that developers pushed into the remote repo, any commits or merges that were done to master branch. So basically we would find out about any changes, but we won't know exactly what those commits are. Like we won't know exactly which code was changed, which files, any of that. We would just know that there were changes. So we would know that repo received 3 new remote branches, and then there was also a couple, pushes into the master branch. That's what we would know by doing git fetch. So it's basically kind of like a summary of changes that were made, right? So find out if changes were made to the remote repo. Now, after you have that information, first of all, know whether you need to get changes or not, because there's no reason for you to pull if there's nothing to pull, right? This way because it will give you a little report saying, master had updates, some other remote branches appeared. And then after you did that, if you're on the personal branch, so you would, again, make sure that you're on the branch you want to be on. So you would do git checkout and then your personal branch name, right? Just to make sure you're on the right branch. And then you would do git rebase origin master. All right. So if you are going to do this command, this one right here, you have to run this one first, because your local repo needs to be aware that there are changes on origin master in order for it to pull those changes and apply them properly to your branch. Now let's talk about git rebase, because there's also another command, right? And I'll explain the difference, which is git merge origin master. All right, so let's talk about the difference. So git rebase will pull all remote changes to the master branch. And it doesn't have to be master, but it's because we're saying origin master, right? Origin meaning remote and master meaning which branch. So, and apply them to your branch below your changes. And I'll illustrate in a second. I know below sounds a little bit weird, but that's exactly what it does. Now, git merge origin. That's exactly the same thing, but it will apply them on top of your changes. Okay? So below your changes and top of your changes. In other words, let's say we have master. And master had a couple changes in it already. Right? You made a copy. You made a copy when you said git checkout -b. Remember we learned about -b last class. So git checkout -b, you made a copy. So this is your branch. You made a copy. They're identical. Now you're starting to make your change. All right? You're starting to make your change. But meanwhile, somebody else pushed their change into the master branch, right? So you are right here. You made your change. You're at this point in time where the dots are. And now you want somehow to get this change into your branch as well, right? But you still want to keep your changes. You don't want to discard your changes. You want to keep them. And you want to get this change into your branch. So here's where your choice lies. Do you want their change over here, or do you want their change over here? Okay? So if you want to have a situation where it looks something like this, okay, that's rebase. So if you rebase, their change gets put in before your changes. But if you want their change after yours, then you have to do merge. So in other words, oops, it will look like this. Okay, questions?
So, Ellie, one thing, this rebase and merge, they will pull the changes. Like here, we are doing git checkout to my personal branch. They will pull from origin master to my personal branch.
Yes.
Okay, we can pull it on local master also, right?
Well, you won't be able to push from master if you do it this way, because I'm blocking all of you guys from pushing into master.
Yeah, I can make a copy of my master and then push it to you.
You could. But I mean, to get into a habit of working like you would in the workspace, right, in the workplace, I would recommend just, following the process immediately. And the process is to work from your own personal branch. So like I would never in my workplace work from master branch. I would create my own personal branch. In fact, for every single Jira story, feature, bug, or anything that I'm working on. So if I am automating test cases for a specific, bug fix, then I would literally create a branch called feature / the name of my Jira. So like, project name -123 and then underscore the name of the summary of the Jira. Pretty long names. Like the names of my branches are pretty long because they contain whether it's a story, a bug, right? Whether it like the Jira number in it, the summary of the Jira, and usually like if there's anything else that needs to be done, like a tag name or label or something like that. So
after this, what will be on my local master?
After what?
After supposing I do git checkout local branch, I do git rebase
Your master doesn't change. Your master won't change.
It will remain as the original master.
Yeah. You would actually have to check out master and do git pull in order to, so you would have to follow this, right? These steps to get your local master updated.
Yeah.
In fact, let me add that note.
Create branch would be the best option, right? Here.
To get your local master up to date with new changes, do this, right? These two things. By the way, I'm going to save this file and upload it in our
Yeah, that would be
repo
great.
as well. So don't worry about it. That's why I'm typing it up. All right. So this is what to do to update your local master. This is what to do to update your personal branch. Now, again, if you're already on personal branch, then you don't have to do this part, right? If you're already on master, then you don't have to do this part. But I'm putting it in just in case. Now, another question I was asked, well, what if I modified a file and you modified a file and we modified exactly the same line? Yes, then you will have what is called a conflict. And so when you do this, your Git will tell you there's conflicts and you have to resolve conflicts, right? So I'm gonna try right now to create a conflict with you guys watching, all right? So that we can see how resolving a conflict might look. So I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm actually able to create things in Git also and modify things from Git. So I can actually, like, you know, go and mess with code here. So let's go and mess with something. Create a new file. No, actually, no, let's not do that. I know what we're gonna do. 1 second. So we are gonna go. Let's do it here. Create a new file. We're gonna call it git usage txt. I had my cap locks on. Sorry, guys. Let me do it one more time. Git usage.txt. And then let's put some stuff from our file that we wrote right now. So we'll put some things here, right, like that. And then we'll say we'll commit it. I don't recommend this, you guys, right? But so I'm going to commit it directly into master. You guys really shouldn't do that, but you know, it is what it is. I see several of you message me their usernames. I'll add you guys in a second, so just hold on with me. And I do not know if Zoom can be cast to a TV screen, unfortunately. Okay, let's see. So I created this new file. You guys all see it, right? Git usage txt. There it is. It's right there. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing in my repo in my GitHub. So git branch. You guys can see I'm on master, right? Everybody sees it. So I'm actually going to right here, right click and say new file. And I'm going to say same thing, git usage.txt. Wait, did it work? Nope, didn't work. One more time. New file, git usage.txt. Now it worked. And I'm going to say add. And I'm going to, again, copy and paste stuff here. But let's you know, change some stuff. Let's let's add 3 spaces or something like that. Hopefully this is going to create a conflict. If not, I'm going to have to be more creative, but usually this is good enough. Okay, so we're going to save it. Same thing here. We're going to git status to find out what changed. Git add, right? As I said, you can do git add and specifically the file name, or you can just say git add dot, and that will add everything there is to add. And then we're going to do git commit, all those commands that I wrote, -m. We're going to add a message again, class notes on git, right? We're going to say enter, and then we're going to do git push. All right, all the same stuff that I talked about. Everything is the same. So now here we go. If I, oops, excuse me. No, in fact, oh yeah, okay, good, it worked. So now, look, see, I didn't fetch anything. So when I did this, my push failed, right? Couldn't push. So I'm going to do git fetch. And it's saying, oh, I'm sorry, Ellie, their master, see, got more stuff from origin master. So there was more stuff in origin master. So it's telling me. And so it's still telling me there's a new branch. So Lena has created her own new branch. Great, awesome. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say git, right, rebase, right, origin master. All right, do you guys see it? Do you guys see the message? It says conflict. So it tried to auto merge and it ran into a conflict. And it's saying you have to resolve all conflicts manually and then mark them as resolved. And then you can say git rebase continue and it will, continue. All right. So now let's look at our git usage file. Let me just move this a second. Hold on. All right, do you guys see it? My git usage. It has some stuff added, right? So it's saying this is what's inside the head, right? And then it's saying all of this other stuff. That's what's inside my class notes. So head is actually what we got from the repo, right? From origin, from remote repo. And everything after this set of dashed lines, all the way until the next set of errors, that's what is in my local commit. That is what I was trying to commit right now. And it's basically saying it doesn't know how to merge them. It doesn't know how, like, which lines I need to keep and which ones I should discard. So it understands enough to see that that first line is the same between both of these files, but then it doesn't know what to do with the rest, right? So how do you resolve this conflict? Very simple. You basically delete the stuff that you don't want anymore. Just delete it, right? Because I know that this part matches this part. So I'm going to delete this, right? This is the stuff I don't want. No, I probably don't want this as well. Which one? Hold on. Which one do I not want? Yeah, all of it. Don't want this. And then you go ahead here and then you just delete this part. All right. Now that's manually. That's the way I usually like to do it. I like to do it manually. Or you can go here and you can right click and you say git resolve conflicts. And then, well, that's kind of small. Hold on. Let me just make this nice and big. If you double click on it, it's going to do this weird window for you. And then you can essentially compare them and see what's different and what's not, you know, what's the same.
So one thing, there are 3 of them showing here. How come 3?
So this is the end, going to be the end result right here. So this is what's inside master. This is what's inside your, you know, branch thing, and this is going to be the end result. So you can say you want to delete certain portions, right? And then you can say that you want to keep certain portions by clicking on these arrows.
So you mean the middle one is the actual result, middle one?
Right.
Okay, and left one is, sorry, could you repeat, what is left and right?
So this is what is coming. Wait, did they get it backwards? I guess they don't label it correctly here. Or maybe I'm misinterpreting how this is. It's actually backwards. Sorry. This is coming from master, and this is your local. Sorry. This is your what's here locally, and this is master. I got confused because it says rebasing from master, and I thought master meant this is master, but no. This is your local, this is master, and this is going to be the end result. So again, how do we get rid of this? If you're like, I don't want this part, you can just click on the X and we'll remove it. Oops, what did I do? Not doing what I wanted to do.
So right one is from your repo, right?
Okay, now even I'm confused. What is it doing? Okay, hold on. Why am I seeing that? Yeah, so something in this UI is weird because it's saying it's rebasing branch master onto branch origin master, and I actually want the opposite. I want to rebase origin master.
Origin always means on the Git repository remote, right?
Yeah, remote is whatever's inside GitHub. So weird. Okay, whatever. Let's try to figure this out. It's bad UI, but we'll figure it out. So this part we actually do not want. We want this part, right? We want the little piece. So let's keep the little piece. We're gonna keep that part. And then I guess they want us to do it both ways.
I see below this option accept left or accept right. If you just choose one of this.
Yeah, you could do it, but I'm saying like usually it's not that simple. Usually it's not like a big chunk of code that you can just pick and choose. You just, you go through it and you do it one change at a time. But you guys, I think you see from just the confusion I'm seeing through this UI why I like to do things the old-fashioned manual way. Because technically to me, manually actually makes more sense. And the only thing you're winning is that you get these buttons to click. So which I don't think is much of a helper. So I'm going to abort this because it's actually frustrating me. And I'm going to do it manually. But you could do it through the UI, was all I was trying to say. But through manually, you would say, don't want this part anymore. Delete. And then you would go here and you say, all right, I'm done. Remove. And you're done. All right, so you're done with your merge. Everybody's happy. Everything is great. And then what you do is you go and you add this file. All right, so you go to your terminal, you say git status. It tells you there's conflicts. So you're gonna say, all right, I'm done with my conflicts. You're gonna say git add. You're gonna add that file that you fixed, right? Or you can do it through the UI, right click and say git add, all right? So this way. And then you just follow the instructions here. It says you're gonna say git rebase continue. Oops. Git rebase continue. You copy it and then you paste it. And that's it, you're done. So my point is, I know that there's UI here, and I know some of you have asked me, how do you use it through the UI? How do you use it through the UI? But let's say, for example, just to do a fetch, right? You have to go git repository fetch, and then again git repository change branches, and then git repository rebase, and then to do the merge changes through the UI, again git repository resolve conflict, and then you have to deal with that whole other UI. I do recommend that you guys learn the command line, because in the command line, you just type it in, you're done. You don't have to try to find where it is. You don't have to try to figure it out. It's all there in front of you. I think when you're starting out, command line is a little scary, but I've actually been to interviews where I've been asked what is a command to do something in Git. Like I'll be asked, how do you merge changes in Git, or what would you do if this and this happened? And the fact that I know command line is definitely a plus, and it's a lot faster. So I do recommend that you go and you learn all these commands that we just covered. It's not that many, promise you. Now there's other ones you can also do. There's some additional ones that you guys might want to look into. Some of them are git stash, all right, git cherry pick, git commit amend, all right? But these are not something you would use unless you really know, well, this one is, unless you're really trying to do something fancy. So git stash is a special one, and that is if you want to save changes you made but not commit them, and simultaneously remove them to use later. So I know that's a little bit weird, but I'll show you what I mean right now. All right. Git cherry pick is when you're like, okay, I made all of these commits. I did 1, 2, 3, and your change. And then you were like, you know what? I really shouldn't have done number 2. I really shouldn't have done it. So what you can do is you can create a new branch, and then you can cherry pick from this one. You can say, I want commit 1, I want commit 3, and I want your change, but I don't want commit number 2. All right, so that's what get cherry pick is for. It literally is to pick and choose one commit at a time, which changes get applied to branch. And then we have last one that I recommend you also kind of know about, and that's git commit amend. So you'll see me use that one a lot. So for example, right now, I don't even know how to say it, but I don't want to show it you guys, but I'll explain what it is. So let's say, for example, I was doing all of this stuff, and then I decided that we needed to add a couple more lines on the bottom, just like I did right now, right? I wanted to add a couple more. Well, instead of, or maybe just like I forgot a period somewhere. Like I was writing something, I forgot a period or a semicolon, or I don't know, an arrow somewhere. I don't want to create a whole extra commit for that. I don't want it to be a whole commit, all right? I want to add it to the commit I just finished doing. All right, so I made a commit locally, and now I'm like, ooh, I forgot this little thing. And it's just a period. I don't want to create a whole different commit for it. I want to add it to the previous one. So what you do is you say git add, again, as if you were trying to do a new commit, but then you would execute git commit -- amend, and it will actually add it to the previous commit. Now this one though, you can only use if you have not pushed your previous commit to the remote repo. All right. Used to add additional small changes to the previous commit. Okay, makes sense? Now let me show you how git stash works. So this is how git stash works. You go here, you made some changes. And then somebody comes to you and says, hey, I just pushed my changes into your branch. Why don't you pull them and tell me, if I did everything correctly? Well, unfortunately, because you're in the middle of changing something, right? If you do git pull, okay, I need to actually change something for it to work. Okay, it doesn't matter. I'm making too many things. I'm going to make a mess, but let's pretend, right? If you do git pull, you're going to get a message that says you cannot pull because there is uncommitted changes. So I made uncommitted changes. It's not letting you pull because it doesn't know where to put your stuff yet. You haven't committed them. You haven't, removed them. You don't know what to do with them. They're just hanging out there, right? So if you do git status, hopefully you guys can see what I'm typing on the bottom here. Right? So if you do git status, you can see that there's uncommitted files. If you do git stash, just like that, git stash, those changes disappear. You guys see that they disappeared? They went poof. They're not here anymore. But you didn't lose them. So it's not like that it deleted them. They're stashed. They're kind of in your own little personal temporary storage. And then once you pulled all the other changes that person wanted you to look at and you're ready to go back to finishing this thing that you were working on, it was half-baked, you can do git stash apply. And your changes will come back. See? They're back. And there was no commit, no nothing. It's temporary storage. So I should also put git stash apply. All right, sounds good to everybody? Questions, no questions?
Hi, Eddie, I have a question. So if you change something and then you commit, but later I found that something is wrong, I want to go back to my original one. So how to go there?
You want to roll back?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I can show you how, but this one is dangerous because you actually will lose your previous commits.
Right.
You
But
really want to be sure. You really want to be sure that's what you want to do, okay? And it's a lot easier than you think. That's why I'm like, so hold on, let me just put these in here. All right, and I'll do my git commit, and then I'll show you how to do it. All right, so there we go. All right, so for you guys, it won't work. This is a special command I have for myself, git hist. It's an alias. I'll show you maybe after the break how to add it to your git. But I have this command called get hist, and it shows me all of the commits I made. All right, so you guys can see we did like a demo, and then we did git class notes, and then we have this bonus, right? So I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, ooh, that last commit, really what I shouldn't have done. I shouldn't have done that. Not good. Shouldn't have done that. So if you have not pushed yet, all right, again, you can roll back if you haven't pushed. You have to make sure you haven't pushed. Then you can say git checkout. No, hold on. Just checking something. Okay, yeah. Git checkout head. And then instead of saying -1, you do tilde1. But you can literally think of it as a minus. And so whatever number you put here, that's how many commits back. All right, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm gonna copy this for a second, and then I'm gonna do this. All right, so git checkout commit head. So see, you're now back to the class notes. So if I do git what am I trying to do? Git hist. Git hist. You can see that that last one isn't there anymore. And then also, if you do git branch, you are now not on your branch, but on that previous commit that you were on. All right, so all right, so if you do that, if you do git checkout minus back, you're gonna be on that previous commit, and then you can commit that. If you check out your branch again, then you're back to your commits before. Let's see, there's another one to do. Hold on, let me look it up. I already have it hard coded, but I don't remember. Bear with me. Hold on. I'm going to check something for us. Sorry, looking at my notes. I have an alias, but I don't remember what it actually is. No, not here. Huh. I don't remember the commands. Again, it's my alias. So one second, you guys. Let me look up the command. Okay, I remember. Sorry, it's not git checkout. It's another command. but I have it as an alias. So give me a second. I'll show you actually how to create alias as well for yourself. Git. Hold on, let's see if this actually works. Yeah. So here are the aliases I have, you guys. So that's why I don't remember how to remove the last commit. But how about you guys can add them as well if you want. So to add it, you would do.
Maybe we can skip it. It seems little advanced stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's, but I think git hist might be nice for you guys to have. So let's. Anyways, how about this? During break, I can do it. That's not part of the class, but like during break, I'll show you the command. But I think the original question is, how do you get rid of the last commit? So it's reset hard, not checkout. My bad. Git checkout will also work, but it creates a new branch for you, which you don't want. If you want to get rid of your changes in the current branch, then you would have to do git reset. So if you do git checkout head -1, right? Excuse me, tilde1, then it makes a new branch. So wait, what? Now you guys, I definitely messed something up.
So is this a way to check out previous versions that you've already pushed to the remote depository?
Yeah, by this hash. Yep. So if you have this hash number, you can pretty much check out any specific commit. Again, it won't check it out on top of this branch. It will create a new branch for you. So just like I did before, when I did git checkout head tilde1, I could also do git checkout and give it one of these commit numbers, and we'll create, it will check out all the code up until that commit.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And that one I can guarantee for sure. But so hold on, you guys. This is actually, this is interesting. So remember how I did class notes on Git? I wrote back my previous commit. And so what I'm doing right now is I can actually do git commit, oops, not commit, commit -- amend, right? And I can add these new changes. In other words, these green things, right? All of this green stuff, I can add it now as to my previous change. So as you guys can see, those bonus ones are now as part of my previous commit. And I can do git push before I mess anything up and push it. Okay, so if I do this now, I should be able to say my git usage notes, and it will include all of those other things as well. apparently twice because I messed up again, but we'll clean it up. Okay, does that make sense? So I showed you how to use git commit amend. I showed you how to do git stash and git stash apply. I'm not going to show git cherry pick, and I wasn't really planning to show you how to do undo, but if you really wanted to get rid of your stuff, you have two options. You can either git checkout head ~1, that creates a new branch for you with the previous commit, or you can do git reset, git -- reset, and then again you can do the same thing, head ~1, and then you can put hard or soft depending on how you want to do it. So one of those two options. Okay, on that note, let's keep going. I'm going to close this.
Just one thing, Ellie, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So like I pushed the homework. I'm pushing the homework, and I want it to push to your where your repository is, and that pop-up comes to user ID and password. So I'm entering that user ID that you granted me permission and password, and it added the branch to your repo. So I'm just curious, like, how does it know to add to your repo? Because with that user ID and password, it could be my repo also with that account, right? That the repo that I have in my account.
Well, you pulled my repo, so it knows that you're trying to push to my repo.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So as long as you're inside that folder is now being identified as a copy of my repo.
Okay.
You guys, let me just add a couple more people that asked to be added in Zoom. Just a second. Hold on, who did I already add? So let me add Kim. All right. Let me add. Yeah, not here yet. Tanya, did I already add you?
You added me. Thank you.
Really? I don't see you. I'm gonna add you again in case it didn't work last time. I think that's it, right? Did I forget somebody?
Ellie, have you added me on Daniel U99?
I think you're the first one. Yeah, I added. You're there.
Oh, okay. Because I try to push and it doesn't work.
Did you accept your invitation? You need to accept your invitation first.
Yes.
This is Stan. I don't think I've seen mine on this list yet. If you have a chance to check.
Did you send me your username?
Yeah, under my personal
Okay, checking
message.
now. Checking.
Slack.
Hold on. Let me add one more that I just found. And Stan, checking on you now. Stan, I don't have anything from you. I have Daniel, but I don't have anything from you. You want to just send it to me through Zoom right now while I'm adding everybody?
Yep.
Yeah. Install. Okay, sure. Can do that. Okay, so while we're doing that simultaneously, let's go back to this guy. All right, so your homework, right? You had a bit of homework. Your homework was to go through this guy, right? There's a bunch of code that we wrote and to convert all of it through functions. And I kind of told you to do something very basic. I basically asked you to wrap each one of the API calls that you made into a function. So for example, this one, right? This one. This is the API call that we made. You, what would you want to call it? Something like get all posted positions, right? Something like that. So, you know, you would go here and you would say def get all positions, something like that. And then you would just paste your code here, right? And because you want to return that information, you would say return. And then over here, instead of request.get, you would just do something like this, right? Oh, self, yeah, but not for long. All right, so that would be something like that. So you would have to go through all of this and do the same thing. You would go here and for this one, for the authentication, right? Again, you would copy this part. And then you would do something like self.authenticate, right? And then you would create another function here, def authenticate. And you would paste the code here. Now for authenticate, that's a special one. We want to be able to pass in our username, right? Or our email, I guess it's called here, and our password. So you would add those inside the parameters. And instead of having hard-coded email and hard-coded password, you would actually use variables. So that's really the hardest part here. You had to replace welcome with a variable and the email with a variable. And then of course, after you replace those, you would have to go back to your authenticate and you would have to, you know, put the actual values back inside here. So you would have your welcome for the password, and then you would have your username. I'm sorry, I keep saying username, but I mean email. So you would have student@example.com as your username. All right, so pretty easy stuff. You would continue going and do the same thing for verify and for candidate, right? You would do exactly the same thing. And the reason I had you do that is that as you write more tests, you don't want to continue duplicating your code, and you also don't want to have a lot of these hard-coded values in there. You want to have functions that you can keep reusing over and over. So not only that, if we go through all of this, you might realize that there are certain things that you are constantly asking for. So like every single time we create any kind of statement, we take the response and we convert it into JSON, right? So wouldn't it be nice if we could convert this response to JSON and return it to a person already converted to JSON, so they don't have to convert it again, right? I think it would be useful. So, or, you know, we always keep asking for the response code. Well, if we can already return all of this stuff to the user, so they don't have to do any of these like interesting stuff that's happening here. So that was the general idea. That's why I asked you to do that in your homework. So I'm just going to stop talking for a second and convert the other two. And then we're going to keep working on this test so we can make it a little bit more useful and tester friendly. And then we'll switch to another file and do some work there. So let me just convert this one very quickly.
Do we not say post verified, or we always use get? Because it's a post.
No, I actually meant like get verified, not like a get. I guess it's not not a good name. That's why I wrote verified. I just didn't want to know. I didn't know what else to call this function. like I'm trying to give it an English name, not to actually say that it's a get, but what would be a good other name?
You just use verify. That's it. No, not good.
I actually wanted to do like an action, right? Like authenticate, get all positions.
Posting headers.
Usually when I post, I would say create something, right? Like if you post, you create account or create a user. But here, I'm not sure they're using post correctly. Like technically, it's not supposed to be a post if you think about it, right? We're not creating anything. We're actually getting verified. It shouldn't be a post. This is incorrect usage of the post method. But oh, I know. Perform user verification. Maybe. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I would just.
I mean, and then the last one. Self.get users positions. Get positions user applied for. What's a good name, you guys?
So get candidates position, that is good enough.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Get candidates position.
Get candidates positions. Thank you.
No, get candidate, I think positions, because this is like plural S in candidates doesn't seem right. It's one candidate. Yeah, this seems
okay.
right.
I like it. Okay, good. And then of course we would pass in the ID. All right. Or in our case, it's user ID. User ID. We would do get, oops, ignore that for a second. It auto-completed all weird on me. Okay, and then we would put user ID. Okay, so that's where I wanted you guys to start. Pretty easy start. Now, as you can see, there are some hurdles to overcome. The first one is being this, verify headers issue. So in order to perform verification, we actually need to be able to send over the token that we received, right? So these guys have to receive a token somewhere. They have to receive it from somewhere, those tokens. So that's why there's two things we can do. We can either, when we perform authentication, store that token somewhere, right? Or we can, and so we can always retrieve it ourselves. Or there's a second we can do is we can pass that token in. So when we perform user verification, we can actually pass that token into our function. When we get the candidate's positions, we can pass, verification into that function. So we can pass that token always into a function. So let's see. For now, let's do that. So for now, I'm just going to take that token.
Only one question.
Yes.
For all GET requests in this application, it's not required the authorization. We still use it for the best practice or no?
Yeah, we're gonna pretend that we still require it.
Okay, got it.
We are going to pretend. Yeah, I kind of noticed that. I hope nobody else would notice it, but I guess you guys did. Sorry, lost my train of thought. I'm just gonna pass this in as a token. All right. And so I'm going to cook those headers inside my perform user verification function. So I'm going to do this here. Oops. That works, right? So we don't have any reds anymore. Everybody's happy. Something is not happy here. Return. Okay, so that was the first step, right? So that's the first step. Now the second step is we actually don't want these functions to live here. We want them to live in kind of our request library. So we can create a library and then all of our tests would be able to use those libraries. Now again, this is a class, right? So I'm not having you write too many tests. But essentially, if we really think about it, in the real world, we would be creating a separate set of tests for every single one of these API calls, right? Every single one of these. And as you look at it, as you look at these API calls, let me actually collapse all of them. They're actually split into several categories, right? So we have our application. We then have our resume, right? Kind of over here. We have our authentication stuff, and we have our candidate stuff, right? And in fact, I would also say positions, even though it says candidates and then positions are under them, but it starts with the word positions, right? So there's actually one, we'll ignore resume, 2, 3, there's 4 different categories of API. So when I'm storing these inside my project, what I would do is probably I would create a new Python package, and I would say something like API lib or just lib. Let's just call it lib. Right? We'll call it a lib. And then
lib is a standard keyword. So how about we don't use lib?
Why not?
I don't know. Generally, we have lib as a keyword. So I thought.
No, keyword. Lib is not a reserved keyword in Python. It's just something that is commonly used to name a library or like place where you would store things to use in your code. So we can call it lib. That's fine. And then we can say new and then Python file, right? And we would start probably, I don't know if you guys want to put them all in the same place or if you want to split them the same way they're split up here, right? Don't know yet. But for now, I'm just going to, let's call it, let's go to authentication because we actually have 2 methods in there. So we'll go lib and we'll call this, right? And we're not going to select Python unit test. We're going to select Python. So basically, I just created a container for those methods that I just created as part of my, or you guys should have created as part of your homework, right? So I created all these methods as part of my homework, right? But in the real world, they wouldn't live inside your test case. Why? Because you want to create other tests. So you will be authenticating from all these other test suites, right? You would be performing user verification, possibly from all these other test suites. You'll be getting the candidates' positions from all these other test suites. So as a result of writing API tests for all these other API, you might want to use all of these. Or maybe not even that. Maybe, you're going to be writing WebDriver tests and you're going to need to create positions or you're going to need to do something like that. So you might want to have access to these API calls to create data. So you want to have them in a separate lib. And so that's what we're doing right now. We created these functions, but they're still inside the career portal test case, right? Which they shouldn't be. They should be living somewhere else completely. So I created a container for them, right? I created lib, and then I created authentication inside. And what I want to do right now is I want to move them. So I'm going to highlight them, and I'm just going to say refactor and move. All right. Now, when I do this, why not? Why aren't you working? Great. Don't understand why.
So this is better than cut and paste to the other file?
Yes, because if you do it this way, it's actually supposed to update all the references. So all of these references that we already created, it would update. Now the question is, why isn't it working? It should. We're doing it correctly. I don't know, it's doing it one at a time, but it's not letting me do it as a whole. So hold on, let's see if I can do it again. Maybe this one, it will work. Back there. Move. Why? I don't know, you guys. It's supposed to let me move 4 at a time. It's not letting me. You can try on your own. If it's letting you, you would just be able to highlight them and move them. But if it's not, you would have to do it 1 at a time. So you can just right click on the name of the method and say refactor and then move. And then you just provide the name of the new location, right? So it's lib authentication and you say refactor. And it moves it for you and updates immediately the call. So for example, in your test, remember we said um, results equal authenticate. It doesn't have self in front of it anymore. You see that? No more self in front of it. Not only that, now you also have an import statement to get those functions. So by doing it, it updates all the code correctly by doing it using refactor. So again, right click on it, say refactor, move, and then make sure you provide the path. So again, it's just lib authentication refactor. Unfortunately, it's making me do it 1 at a time. Try it. Maybe yours will let you do it all in one chunk. For some reason, it's not being nice to me today, not letting me do it that way. So basically, in the end, as you can see, I don't have these methods as part of my test anymore. They're gone. They're not part of my test case. They are now part of my lib. So they're all residing here. Okay. They all live here. So far, so good.
Yes.
Okay. So why did I do this? Why did I put you through this torture? Well, there is this matter of token, right? This matter of token. And even though we now know that some of these things don't require a token, a lot of them will, right? A lot of them will require a token. So instead of us in our test, like what we're doing right now, having to pull out that token and pass it around, like I did over here, wouldn't it be nice if we could execute authenticate at any point in time and all of these methods would immediately know about the token? Like they would magically know about it. It would be nice, right? You wouldn't have to pass the token around. You would be able to say something like perform user verification and not pass this, not pass it at all. And your method would know where to get the token from. It would just know because you already did authentication earlier, right? So there is, again, two ways to do it. One is if we get creative and we combine this into a class. Well, actually, we're going to do it anyway, but it doesn't have to be a class. We basically create a variable here. And so when we perform authentication, it basically extracts the token and stores it in the variable for us. And then these methods can just check the variable has been set or not and use that token. But a second way to do it is actually to use a session. Okay, so far we haven't talked about request sessions, but if we do request dot and we say control space, besides all these other stuff like get and post and codes and head, right, and delete, all these things that are here, patch options, there's also this session option, right? Session. And the cool thing about session is it will allow you to set your headers and to set and to receive cookies and to persist them from one request to another. So when we do authenticate, we don't actually have to extract the token and pass it around. That token will stay inside the session, just like if you were using a regular browser, right? So you were using a regular browser, you don't go manually and check, oh, look, my bank gave me a cookie. Now the next time I click on something, I'm gonna have to pass this cookie back. No, it just stays, with your session in your browser until you're ready to, to use it the next time you submit something to your bank, for example. So that's what we're going to do right now, okay? We are going to use the session instead of extracting the token ourselves in order to perform these requests. But in order to do that, we are going to have to tie all of these things together somehow, right? So we need to tie all of these guys together into one. So give me a second. I'm just going to look at my notes very quickly to make sure I don't lead us astray. And I don't code something wrong. And then even though. Okay, while we're waiting for my notes to pop open, because they're being extra slow today. Why not? Come on, client. Bear with me, you guys. Sorry. Okay. Let's see how we're gonna do this.
So one session is one whole browser session, right? As long as I'm logged in until I close the browser window.
Right. Well, not even closed, like until you quit, essentially.
Yeah.
Not necessarily closed, because you can actually have a session continue being open even after you close the browser session. Close the browser window. Sorry.
And then I'm logged out, right? Then how can it continue?
When you log out of a website, you're actually clearing out your cookies. So it actually, if you had, or not necessarily clearing out, you're nulling out your cookie. Here, hold on. Let me don't know if I can show it right now. Let me come back to it, okay? Ask me later. Let's finish our coding first, because I want us to make some headway into this session business, okay? So I have these 4 functions here, right? And we're gonna pretend that all of them need to be able to use the token, even though I know that some of them do not. So for example, get candidates positions should have to use a token. I'm really not sure why it's not asking you for that information. It really should. So it should actually look more like this, right? It should be, okay, I obviously didn't copy enough stuff. Sorry. Okay, we'll deal with this later, but I'm just trying to make it so it's not failing right now. Right? It should look exactly like verify, because technically you shouldn't be able to check which positions you yourself have applied for until you've authenticated. So this is a bug in our code. We're not going to think about it too much. We're going to pretend that we need that header. Okay, we're pretending. We're going to go to a real website after we're done with this so we can practice what we learned. And that's going to actually require us to have a header all the time. So let's finish this and then we'll do a real example. And we'll use Beautiful Soup because I know I was asked to show how to use that. So for a real example, we'll use that. Okay, moving on. So we have all these 4 functions and somehow we need all of them to share the session information. Why? Because we want them to be able to have access to this token, right? To this token that we're passing around. So this token is important. We don't want to pass it around. We want it to actually be part of the session all the time so we don't worry about it once we authenticate. So to do this, we want to make sure that all these functions are also part of the same container. Because when we start using this container, that session needs to be shared, right? So we want to make sure that every single time we create a new instance of that container, it creates a new instance of a session and all these functions can continue sharing it. But at the same time, if we want to create a second session parallel, right? In parallel, we want that also to be contained. We don't want the 2 sessions to overlap with each other. Am I totally fumbling this? Okay, let's try again. Hold on. So I want to be able to give access to all 4 of these functions to a token. Everybody with me so far? Hopefully. Hopefully, yes. If I do this, token equals blah, right? And then once I authenticate, I say something like, oh, not here. I'm not, this is not real code right now, but just bear with me, right? I can say something like, again, not real code, you guys, just pretending for now, right? Just pretending, do something like this. And so that would replace whatever's in the token, right? So the next function that comes here, it would say, oh, okay, I see that there's token here and it can use it, right? This function comes here and says, oh, I see there's a token here that can use it. But then what happens if I want to call authenticate again to in parallel, right? So that test is running, another test in parallel wants to also authenticate, right? What happens to this token then? So you see what I mean? Like I call this function once, I get a token, it gets stored here, everything is good. All these functions now have access to this token. But what happens if the next time we call authentication again, it overwrites that token, right? You get a different one. So before this was, this was none, and then this got called and token became A, right? Behind the scenes. And then the next time we authenticate, this becomes B. So we can't run in parallel, is what I'm trying to say. if we do it this way, if they're not all part of a container that is kind of, self-contained and it's an instance, every time we call authenticate, it would overwrite whatever was the previous token. It would keep overwriting it and overwriting and overwriting. So we would keep losing tokens, right? Am I making any sense?
Do we run tests in parallel? I mean, my understanding is they are run one after the other, unless several different jobs are running them same time.
Right. Not really. You could have two tests running in parallel, but more specifically, you might actually want to authenticate as Bob and Jane, and then Bob does something and you want to make sure that Jane can't see the stuff that Bob did. Or Jade does something, you want to make sure that Bob receives her application. So Jane submits an application, Bob receives it. Or so you might actually have two users in the same test running in parallel. So Jane does a little bit of something, Bob does a little bit of something. Jane does a little bit of something, Bob does a little bit of something, right? And that's the test. We're interacting with each other. Does that make sense?
No.
No.
And other thing is, Slava, I took Slava's class and he said, okay, REST is stateless. So if there is one test, then it has to be independent. The value is not transferred from one test to other unless you save something like token somewhere. So then
we're talking about the same test. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to do multiple things simultaneously. So
I'm trying to think, are you saying the same thing or opposite?
Okay, let's go back to our career portal. So let's say that I am a manager, right? And I posted a position. This is strictly hypothetical, right? So I went to this portal and I posted a position. I'm a manager. Now, there's also Bob, and he wants to apply for my position. So my test case, the test case that I want to write, the one I want to automate, is that Bob goes, applies for a position. For that, he has to log in, right? So Bob has to log in and apply for a position. So Bob is logged in. He got his token. This is all one test. Bob got his token. And then I, as a manager, right, me, Jane, I logged in also. I got my token. And now I want to check who applied for the position that I posted. Not which positions I applied for. I want to check which applicants applied for the position that I posted. Same test, but two people are logged in. Two people are performing actions simultaneously. Does that make sense? So I'm calling authentication twice in one test. And that means that if I call authentication once as Bob, that token gets stored. And then I, as a Jane, log in, I overwrite Bob's token, right? So there was only one variable, it got overwritten. Now Bob, maybe after I checked that he applied, Bob wants to, he was like, oh, I uploaded my old resume. Let me upload for the position again. Well, when he tries to do that, that token got overwritten. His token is overwritten. He can't do it anymore. That token now represents me, Jane. It doesn't represent Bob anymore. So we can't continue. The point is that we can't continue using this code the way it is now, right? We can't just have token hanging out by itself. We can't have these functions hanging out by themselves. What we would have to do is put them all in one container, and we would have to create copies of that container every single time we run. So I may be overcomplicating. So let me use actual technical words. We want to put all of these inside a class. And the reason we want to put all of them inside a class is so we can create instances of that class for every single user that we want to utilize in our tests. So if we have a test like I just described, where Bob needs to authenticate and Jane needs to authenticate, and then we don't want them to overwrite each other's tokens, or we don't want them to overlap each other's sessions, you know what I mean? Even this on the session level. If they're both using their own instance of a class, that won't happen. So instances are not going to overwrite each other. Instances kind of play in their own separate corners. But if we leave functions the way they are now, they're just part of a module. They're not part of a class. People will end up stepping on each other's toes. Or not people, but our test people, right? Our test users will end up stepping on each other's toes. So hopefully I did not confuse you more, but here's what I want you to do. All right, so this was all pseudocode. This is this is all obviously pseudocode. So what I want us to do is I want us to go here and say, I don't know, class right, class authenticate. Actually, we don't. Do I want to inherit? Okay, for now, let's just do object, and then we'll figure out if we want to inherit from something else later. But class authenticate from object. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure all of these are indented because they want to be part of that object. So we created a container. We put all of them inside a container. So now when somebody wants to use one of these functions, they need to create an instance of the authenticate class, and then they'll be able to call these functions. They won't be able to call them directly anymore like we did before. They would actually have to create an instance of authenticate and then use them. So we kind of made our code a little bit harder to use, but the next step will make it more convenient to use also. So a little extra step in order to use it, but more convenient in the long run. So you win some, you lose some. So we put all of them inside class. And now we're going to create in a constructor, an init. So we're going to say def underscore underscore init. And inside here, we are going to say requests dot session. Okay, that's what we're going to do. I talked quite a bit and I think I lost everybody. So how about we stop for a second and you guys can ask questions and I'll try to rephrase so it actually makes sense what we're doing. And hopefully I'll do better. Can you guys unmute yourself? Nobody wants to.
Yeah,
Good. There people are there. Good.
What is this init self? If you can elaborate on it.
Okay. All right. So let's, yeah, I guess let's talk a little bit about Python basics. So we already know that everything, so they're containers, right? So everything that's indented means that things are inside a container. We've seen it as part of our test. What we haven't seen is this special function, and it is a function, def, called init, right? Now, init for a regular Python file is sort of the same as setup is for a test case file, right? So in a test case file, when we have a function called setup, it will get executed before every test, right? It gets executed first. In other words, it's the first thing that gets executed to get stuff rolling. In a regular Python file, right, just like we have here with authenticate, we don't have setup. Instead, we have a thing called init. And init, again, is a special function. It's a reserved word. So just like setup is a reserved function name, init is a reserved function name. And it will also get called first. So whenever we decide that we want to use this container, right, this bit of code, everything that's inside here, and we try to invoke it, we're like, we're getting ready to use this code. Here we go. This function is going to get called first. So it will call it and it will set up all the other stuff that we need in order to run all of our other requests. Is that a good explanation? So think of init as setup, but setup is for test cases and init is for regular Python files.
But setup runs each time, I think, right? And it runs only once.
Setup runs for every single test because unit test actually creates a separate instance for every single test. Same here. Init will run for every single instance that you create of this object. In other words, of authenticate. Every time you create an instance of authenticate, and init will get triggered. But yes, after that, you can call as many functions on that, on that object as you want, and init won't get triggered anymore. It only gets triggered that first time that you start using this object, right? Or you invoke this object.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we created a class called authenticate. We created init, and we created this session. And then notice how I immediately put the session inside self, right? So that's that magic container that we carry across everywhere, right? So we have access to it everywhere. Now, when we moved these functions from our original test to here, self actually got removed from all of them, right? It got removed. So we actually want to add it back in. We want to add self back in, right? We want to add self here. And you can just copy and paste. You want to add it here. You want to add it here.
And why are we doing that?
Because we want all of them to have access to everything that we do inside init. We want them to have access to the self. The reason to remove it when we moved it is we moved it into a module. We did not move it into a class. And so IDE wasn't smart enough to kind of ask us and say, are these going to be part of a class eventually? Right? It basically just moved them and said, well, since you're moving them away from this class into a new location, you won't have access to that class's self container anymore. So it removed it. But now we put all of these functions into a new class. So this new class has its own self container. So we might as well use it now, right? So we might as well put those selves back. And by doing that, we're giving it access to that session that we just created. So we created a session, and by adding self back into all of our 4 functions, we now have access to session. So we'll be able, instead of to say requests.get, we'll be able to say session.get. And that's going to save us some legwork, right? So we're kind of moving on from doing one request at a time to creating a session and then executing all of our requests on top of that session rather than one at a time. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yes.
Good. All right, so we have our session, we have our requests, and so we're gonna start kind of massaging it one at a time. So over here, right, over here, instead of requests, we're gonna say self.session. Nothing else has to change. So you just take that request and you replace it with the word session. That's all. So self.session. All right. Now in our test, when we authenticated, I'm kind of jumping back and forth, but just bear with me. When we authenticated in our test, right, we got a result. And then what did we do with that result? We checked that it was 200, which, okay, great, but it could have been something else. That's fine. We checked that it's 200. And then what did we do? We said JSON loads, right, in order to get that JSON content out. And we extracted the token from it. You guys remember that? So we did all of this legwork, all of it. Well, what I want to do is I want to avoid having to do all of that. I want to avoid having to extract a token. Oh, interesting.
Eli, why is it's when we testing login in UI, we just check credentials. Why it's here we need to check result authenticate, token, all this. It's like must be this way because it's API.
I don't think I understood the question. Are you asking why we have multiple assertions?
Yes, for login. Yeah.
So actually your browser is the one that's checking that it's 200, okay? If you came back without 200, like instead of 200, you came back with 404 or 500, you would see it. So you don't think you're checking it, but you're actually checking it, right? So if you were manually performing this test case and all of a sudden 500 came back, you would know. You would be like, whoa, okay. In fact, you would be surprised even if it was 203. Your browser would actually like do a little icon on the bottom and would be like, or 302, redirect, right? You probably,
Yes.
well, that one you probably won't see on the screen, but that's
And
probably
why we need token to?
Well, this token we only need it so we can authenticate further, right? That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. This token was the only reason we extracted it as part of authenticate is because we wanted to be able to, you know, do verify, and we wanted to get all of the positions for that specific user.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the
Okay,
whole
thank you.
point. I want us to be able to do sessions without having to do all this jazz,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we use sessions, the session will itself
Got it. Thank you.
have access to this token. We won't have to do any of this, you know, mumbo jumbo, essentially. But additionally, maybe when you're testing, you do want to see what the token was. So I'm actually going to put it into the function just for like a return type. So instead of doing a response, you can later do a return. So hold on, I'm going to do a return. And then, hold on, let me see, how do I want to do this? Okay, we'll do that next, actually. Hold on. We're gonna finish this thought first, and then we're gonna start on the next thought. All right, so now I have this session.post, and so after I authenticate, my session will actually, or should, in theory, we'll see how this actually UI works, but or API works. It should actually contain that token. So when I get to my perform user verification, I shouldn't need to do all of this other like, bearer token situation. It should just work, I hope. And if not, then we'll do some magic here as well. So let's try it. Again, I'm working with a hypothetical API, so it might not work as it does in the industry. But in the industry, you shouldn't have to do anything. So I would go here, and I wouldn't need this. So I wouldn't need to pass a token at all. Remove this. And then I wouldn't have to do any of the updates again, because, you know, whatever, it will be part of the session. And so all I would have to do is say return session self.session post, and then I wouldn't need the headers either, because all of that already would be part of the session. Okay, so the only reason I had to do all these things was because it was a separate request. So I was taking things out of one request and manually putting into the next request, manually. But if I combine all of them into one session that I'm using here, that I'm creating at the top, and they all share the same instance, when I do authenticate, that stuff gets stored into the session, right? And then when I do perform user verification, it uses that same session, right? For that same class. Hopefully you guys are still with me. So it's hard when I can't see your eyes, because when I sit in the classroom, I see people's eyes and I'm like, okay, people get it. Or, okay, I lost everybody. But here, I don't know.
We can turn on camera if you want. I
can't see you guys anyway, because when I share screen,
it's clear.
I'm basically talking to a green dot right now. I see this green dot and I look at it and I'm like, all right.
So Ellie, you were saying when we do this session, this token thing is taken care of internally?
Exactly. All cookies and all headers are taken care of internally, unless there's something additional you want to add. Like there's a cookie that you want to manually add, or headers that you want to manually add, which is what we're going to do after we come back from break. Because one of the headers, right, one of the headers that we wanted to pass in was the fact that we're working from Chrome instead of PyCharm. So when we come back from break, we'll actually modify in the init our session before we even start executing requests, so that all of these requests will pass the information that they're part of Chrome. Okay, you see what I mean here? Hold on, let me show you what I'm talking about. Remember this guy? User agent?
Yeah.
Right? So we want to add this bit over here before we even start making any of these posts or gets, right? So that when we get to all of these posts and gets, it will already have that information. We don't have to keep adding it every single method. It will be done inside the init. And because it's the same session being used over and over, it will persist across all of these functions.
Okay, but other than that, like earlier, you know, we have these two statements which you commented. we needed them. And now with the session, you are saying we don't need them.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes.
Okay.
Now I'm saying it, but I want to make sure that I'm saying the truth because this API is not real, right? This is API that was created for class. So if they do something funky behind the scenes, then it might act funky. So let me actually check. Or in fact, you know what I'm going to do? It's 9 o'clock. So I'm going to send all of you guys to break. 9:25 is when you should be back, right? And then during break, I'm going to try to debug this, answer any questions you have, and then I'm also going to take a 10-minute break at the end. So, but if you want to take a break right now, I'm not going to be explaining anything class related. I'm just going to be debugging and chatting to people. So you can go ahead and take your 25-minute break. All right, sounds good?
I wanted
Yes.
to ask some things.
All right, go take a break for 25 minutes. Yes, let me just debug this and then I'll take questions, okay? Just give me 5 minutes to concentrate so I can actually get this stuff and make sure I haven't lost my mind. That would be useful. Was that in Slack or was that in, hold on. Recording. Starting up. Hold on a second. I'm going to find that attendance document that was there last time. That's what I'm looking for right now.
And you started recording, right?
I did. Though I probably should have talked about attendance first and then. Yeah, so here again, I'm going to post the document for attendance in Zoom. If I can figure out where that is. Chat. Everyone. Okay. So if you guys could just go there and mark your attendance just like you did last time. I don't think they put date, but if one of you can just fill in the date. Right, so just here, let me do that. Okay, or whoever is going to do it, that's fine. But 05 18 2020. So yeah, go ahead and mark your attendance. And
Ellie, where's the document?
I put a link in Zoom chat.
Chat. Oh.
Zoom chat, yeah. If you can't see where the chat button is, you have to click on more, and then it's there in the chat. Or you might just have it by itself, but if you can't see it, it's under more.
I see some people have not put at all, you know, they were there and I know they were there, but they haven't put it at all.
Well, I mean, it's kind of an honor system, right? So you can go ahead and add your name and mark yourself for any classes that you attended in that document. You can just, or if you know somebody. So today we have 16 folks. Okay, let's finish. Let's keep going. So, you guys, unfortunately, I told you we won't need to do the token thing anymore, but it looks like the way this website is designed, it actually doesn't pass the token as a cookie. So we would have to create a cookie ourselves, but just once, all right? And then all of our other functions will have access to it. So I was hoping it's gonna do it automatically, but we're still gonna need to keep that code in order to transfer the cookie from our authenticate method to all the other ones. So we're gonna do that together. But let's start basic. So before we left to break, I promised you that I'm going to teach you how to add that special header to the session, right? Before we even start executing any of the commands to add the user agent. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go back to our original test and I'm going to copy this bit. All right, so that's our user agent and I'm just showing you where I got it. And then when I come over here, right, I'm pasting it. So our user agent. Now I actually don't need the top portion. I only need the, everything from opening curly brackets all the way to the closing curly brackets. That's what I need. I only need that bit. All right. So I'm just copying that part. And then that's actually going to go in between my update parentheses. So again, this is the line we had in there. And I'm going to say self.session.headers and then .update. All right. So you already saw this update function before. You're familiar with it. We had it before. Where is it? Well, I mean, I guess it's here, right? So you've seen it before, update. So it's the same situation here. We're going to say self.session.headers.update. And then inside here, we put that user agent, right? That long user agent key value pairs value, right? So the key is user agent. And then this value, if you guys can remember, we actually copied from our Chrome network tab. And this user agent represents like our Chrome session, all right? So if you wanted to pretend to be a Firefox, then you would have to copy that user agent. So you can open up Firefox and make any request to any website. It doesn't have to be this website. It can be any website. And then you just copy the user agent header. And then it will represent your Firefox session. But this one represents my browser Chrome session. All right, so I updated the headers here. And so now what happens is every time I make a request, that header is going to go out with every single one of these other requests by default. Okay, so let's do that. Let's see how that goes out with every other request, right? So I'm going to go to our test. I'm going to finish modifying it. And then I will finish this bit where I show you how to add the bearer token. Unfortunately, I was hoping that it will automatically pass it into the cookies, but that doesn't happen. It doesn't actually arrive inside the cookies. So we still have to do a little bit of massaging, but that's fine. And then once we switch to HRM, which is what we're going to do to practice our skills today after we're done with this, then that that will pass the cookie automatically. So to the session. So then we will, then what I said before the break will be true because this one is not real. It's not real API, so it doesn't act like real API. Okay, but on that note, let's go back to our test. And if you scroll all the way up, you see that after we made all those changes, right? After we took all of our functions and we placed them inside a class, now all of them are red. So it's basically saying, I can't find these functions. Well, it can't because they're inside a class. So instead of having all these functions here, you can go ahead and just delete them. And we're going to import just that one class, right? So the name of our class is authenticate. So we can go ahead and remove all this and we can just say authenticate. And in fact, if I put A, it auto-completes for me. So my new import inside my test is just going to be from lib authenticate, import authenticate. Much shorter. And then inside our setup, well, it doesn't have to be setup. I want it to be the setup. Yeah, let's do it inside the test for now. Inside our test, I'm going to say something like session, right? I don't want to type out session, but you can if you want. So I'm going to do ses and then equals authenticate, right? So matches this guy, matches this guy. But I'm going to put a set of parentheses afterwards. The reason I'm putting parentheses is I'm actually going to be invoking this, right? So I'm not assigning the class. I'm assigning the constructor from the class to come on, jump back. It's not letting me jump back. All right, fine. Do it manually. So one more time, we imported the class, and by doing this, followed by parentheses, those are important. The parentheses, we are asking Python to create an instance of that class. So in other words, it's going to make an object out of a blueprint. So we had this blueprint class, now it's going to make an object for us. So the ses, right, the ses variable, the session variable, it now contains a pointer to a new object that we can use now to run all of our requests, right? So kind of going back to Python basics, right? In Python, we are able to have functions by themselves in a file, or we can have functions inside an object, right? Inside a class. If functions are inside a class, in order for us to use them, we actually have to create an instance of that class first. So that's what's happening here. Before, our functions were just inside a file. That's why we were able to use them the way they are, you know, they were here before. But now that we moved them inside a class, we have a constructor. So that means we don't have to pass some information in. It's just going to be there automatically. But it does mean we need to create an instance before we can use them. So that's what's happening here. That's this line, right? I'm saying authenticate, and I'm creating an instance of the authenticate class. And now, in order to use all these functions, I'm just going to have to put session in front of all of them. So I'm going to say ses dot, and then the red is going to go away. So as you can see, as soon as I put ses dot in front of it, the red goes away, right? It becomes happy again. It's perfectly happy. No, not perfectly. There's some other modifications. Okay, so far so good, hopefully.
Can you delete that self.headers line? Number 19.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Right. And then notice also that our base URL, right? So all of these things are talking about base URL, but it asked us to put that base URL in. See, it's asking us to pass it in that new file that we created. We don't want to pass it in, right? We can have it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually move this base URL. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say refactor, move. Of course, it's not going to let me do it. Come on. All right, I guess we're going to do it manually. Why don't you want to work? I don't know why it's not working, but okay, fine. So let's just delete it, and we're gonna have to manually modify things, but it's okay. So we're gonna actually add it here, all right, inside authenticate. We're gonna put self.base URL here. And then again, we won't need all of these here anymore. We won't need to pass in the base URL. We can just say self dot, and it will be right. It will fine. It will work. So, don't need this one. Don't need this one. Don't need this one. Okay, still with me? We're continuing to modify our code. Because we have a class now, our constructor can contain the base URL. And to be honest, I wouldn't even have it here. As I keep building out my framework, I would actually have base URL inside my either configurations file or init or somewhere like that. But for now, let's just keep it here. We'll move it later again to a more appropriate place. For now, this is fine. So again, going back to my original test, don't need all of these. I don't need to pass base URL. My base URL is gonna live with my actual requests. So don't need that. Don't need that. Don't need that. See, there's less and less information we need to pass. Less and less. Things are becoming leaner and leaner. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but it's not happy about my token either, right? So session perform user verification, it's asking me to pass in, I wanted to pass in the token, but I don't need to anymore because that's going to be part of my session as well. Don't need to pass it, it's there. So for perform user verification, I just need to, I actually don't need headers either, but we'll get there. So don't need the token.
So we need to delete the line 33 or not?
33, yes, that will go away as well. But don't delete it yet. We're gonna move it to a new location.
I can comment it out.
Yes, comment it out. Yes, good idea. Let's do that so it doesn't confuse anybody. Okay, so far so good. So we're deleting more and more things. This is becoming leaner and leaner. This is good. Now we talked about, we moved this, right? So we moved the user agent as well. So now we can delete this part as well. So you go ahead and delete that one as well. Don't need it. And in fact, now that we deleted the headers, as you guys can see, setup is no longer necessary. So you can either completely delete it or you can put pass so your code doesn't scream at you. And pass is just a keyword that says, don't worry about it. It basically says, yeah, I know you're empty, but we're gonna keep you. So just pass, keep going. Don't mind us. That's what pass means. So here we go. Now we don't even need setup because we don't have to instantiate any of those headers. Nothing has to happen there. All right. So now we are creating a session. We are getting all the positions, just using that session. Nothing is being passed in, doing all that magic. And then we're doing session.authenticate, right? We're passing in our email, our password, getting our result back. And the moment of truth is what happens if we do session.perform user verification, right? If we do session.perform user verification, but we don't pass in a token and we don't pass in headers, right? Because we deleted the headers, there's no more headers. This should still work, right? So if we leave it this way and we wrote our code correctly, it should still work. So let's go ahead and go back to perform user verification, delete the headers, right? We don't need that either. Our headers are actually coming from the session, so we don't need to have them in there. This is where they're gonna come from. So we have our session, we have the headers for the session. We're doing all of this awesome stuff. Okay, so hopefully you guys are with me. Last little bit, right? Last little bit. Because our token is not being passed to us as a cookie, because it's being passed to us in the body, we actually still will have to add this bearer token after we authenticate. So I'm just going to do a little bit of massaging, and hopefully you guys can pick, keep up with me. So instead of doing return over here, I'm going to say response equals okay, but it's also all happening inside authenticate. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to copy that code. That's why I didn't want to delete it. So this code, these 3 lines of code, JSON parsed, right? Result.text. And then I actually don't need assert true. I just need this part, JSON parsed token. But I'm going to copy all of these guys into my authenticate and paste them. So don't need the assert again. Don't need that.
Why do you not need this assert statement here? Or you do assert somewhere else. I mean, why are we completely getting rid of it?
So what happens if you're trying to do like a negative test case on authenticate? What happens if you actually pass in invalid username or invalid password? You don't want your test to fail, right? You don't want it to fail with an assertion error. So you know that you're passing an incorrect username and password, but the test is still valid, right? Meaning you actually wanted to say, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to authenticate, right? Correct?
Yes.
So usually when we're creating these steps, this is what we're doing right now. We're creating these steps. We don't want to have assertions inside them. There's something else we want. We don't want the assertion in there. We want something else in there. Right? That's what we're going to talk about. What do we want in there?
Yes.
Right? But so this thing we don't need. Oops, too much. All right, so we have our response, and go ahead and make sure that this guy and this guy match, right? We want to parse that response. We want to parse it. So go ahead and import your JSON. And then we want to extract the token. Okay? And once we extract the token, what do we want to do with that token? The same thing we did here, or the same thing we did here, right? That's what we want to do. These 2 lines of code. That's what we want to do. We want to take these lines of code, and they're actually going to be part of our authenticate. We still want to create our header, so authorize bearer and then the token, and we still want to update the headers with them. But instead of saying verify headers that update, what are we actually going to be updating? Can you guys guess?
Session header.
Exactly. We're going to updating self.session.headers, right? With this stuff. Now, I don't need this extra line, so I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to replace the headers with it. All right, so I don't need this part. Don't need this. Then I'll do it all in one go. So I'm getting my response back. I'm parsing it into JSON. I'm taking out my token, and I'm updating that session with that header. So now the next time I do verification, I don't need to pass anything to it. I don't need to pass tokens. I don't need to pass headers. I don't need to pass anything. That's now going to be stored in my session for all the other requests to use. All right? All of them. The only exception is if on the same session, I try to authenticate as somebody else. Now, if I create a new session, right, then I don't have to worry about it. This session will have this token, that session will have another one. It's only if I specifically, this session, I say, oh, let me authenticate again, and let me authenticate again, then it's going to keep overwriting it. But other than that, I'm safe. I can have 2 sessions simultaneously, Bob and Jane doing their stuff, like we talked about in the beginning of the class, right? And they're going to stay signed in as themselves. They're not going to overwrite each other. Okay. Sorry, just taking a second to make sure I wrote everything correctly. Session verify. Okay, yes. So last thing, right? So remember that assert that I removed. While I don't want to have an assert in there, I do want to protect myself from a situation when I'm doing an invalid login. So when I'm doing an invalid login, I won't get a token back. So in that situation, what should my function do? What do you think?
If authenticated true, then token.
Well, actually, you know what? Let's do that. Let's see what happens. Let's first see it work, right? Let's see it work. And then we'll replace it with a username and password that don't exist and see what happens when it fails. And then we'll run from there, right? Let's do that.
One thing, like here, we had separate this verify header. And, you know, wherever we need token, we were passing this verify header. We didn't add it at the original headers. But now we are doing it because I think earlier, because you said we assume that we need token every time, right?
Well, no, see what I did? See where it says get all positions? Get all positions is not using session. It's still using requests. So it's actually not getting the benefit of this session. See what I mean?
Yeah.
But authenticate does use session and user verification does use session. And I'm going to come back and get candidate positions. I'm also going to update it so it uses session, right? In fact, let me do it right now.
No, my question was that earlier we had separate verify header and separate another headers. But here we are adding the token to session.headers, or, you know, we are making one headers thing.
Well, we did the same thing before. We just had one set of headers and we called update on it. Same thing here. The headers are here and we're just calling update on it twice.
Yeah, so eventually we just have
we just have one, right? So again, I think when we're using a session, it's cleaner. At least to me, it feels cleaner, right? Because all of our headers are all in the same place. We update them, everything is good. And we don't have to keep passing all of this stuff around, right? We authenticate, we get things set up, and that's it. They're in that session. You don't have to worry about them anymore. So let me just fix this. Don't need the token anymore. Right, see, nice and clean. Everything is nice and clean. Don't need this in. Okay, so let's go back and fix our test. So we have session authenticate. We are authenticating. Yeah, we're doing welcome, checking that everything is good. By the way, session is still, we still want to return the result from our session, right? From our authenticate. So we still want to return that result. So I forgot to do that. So I'll come back and do that again. We still can parse it. We can still check that we authenticated correctly, but that's already part of our test, right? That's already part of our test. That's not something we need to do inside our step to check that we authenticated, because maybe, you know, we'll have tests that don't want to authenticate. And then we are going to perform user verification. Again, we don't have to pass anything. We don't have to pass headers. We don't have to pass token, nothing. It should just work. So this should just be okay. And we can continue with our tests. So everything else should still work the same, right? We shouldn't have to do any kind of hoop jumping. Everything should just work the same. So our test works. The only thing is I forgot to say return at the end of this. So we would have to say return response, right? Because before we had return here. Now we added all these padding in order to get that authentication header, but we still want to return that response. We still want to do that. So here we go. I'm going to set a breakpoint. Where should I put it? Let's put it here. And I'm going to run my debugger. All right, so as you can see, I haven't actually authenticated yet, but I already have a session, and that session already knows my base URL. And if we look at the headers, there we go. See, it already has a user agent. You guys see that? And that user agent is not PyCharm. It's my Chrome. So it's that user agent that we added at the very beginning. Now, when I do this one step, I'm going to do the step right now. Do you see authorization header got added to my session? So this is inside my session. Okay? So inside my session, inside headers, after I performed my authorization, I have that token added now automatically. Right? The next step is still, as always, 200. Everything's fine. So we can still check that we, authenticated. Okay, everything good. But now when we're doing that next API call, session perform user verification, we don't have to pass in a token. We don't have to pass in headers because we're gonna keep on using that same session, which already has that token built in, right? We can see it in the debugger. It's there. It already has that user agent. We don't have to pass it in again. It keeps it. So when we do that step, right? We do that step, our, where is it? It's verified response. It's response to 100, right? So it works just fine. Everything is fine. The test, the test passes essentially. Everything works. Or not, what failed? Oh, well, that's, okay, whatever. That's a whole different can of worms. We're gonna fix later. Groovy, does that make sense? Hopefully. Crickets is good. Alrighty, so that's what we did. Now, let's see what happens if we pass in the wrong username and password. So I'm gonna screw up my password. I'm just gonna do this, and I'm going to run my test, and it will fail. Obviously, we want it to fail. Okay, so this is what happens. Do you see the problem? What do you think the problem is? So basically, this is what we're interested in. This is the problem. What is it? Can you guys tell me in plain English what that means? Who's brave?
It wants a string instead of a number.
Well, we are trying to set up that header, right? So bearer, and then followed by a token. And it's telling us we cannot concatenate a none type to a string. Right? So it's having an issue.
Because so basically, because the wrong password, token was not returned in the response.
Yeah, we don't have a token. So my question to you is, if you are performing if you are automating a negative test case for authentication, what would you like this function to return? Like, would you want it to create a token for you, the header token, or would you just want to leave it blank? I would say blank, right? Like, I mean, logically thinking through it. So if I call this function and I pass in incorrect password or email, or for whatever reason, I wasn't able to authenticate, do I want these steps to be executed? Do I want this to happen?
No.
Do I want this to happen?
No. So just throw an error if you don't get a token.
Why error? I'm trying to create a test case where I actually log in using the false password, right? And check that I can't log in. So I don't want an error.
Try bitch exception?
No, I don't want an exception. I'm trying to create a regular test case where when I try to log in using wrong credentials or no credentials or whatever, right?
Just need to report a test failed, the wrong credential, not exception, no exception.
Your actual test will report that. Your step doesn't need to report that, right? So here.
Yeah, expected result that we cannot authenticate.
Yeah, so let me make this simpler for you, right? So if I create a test, right? What did I do? And I say something like, foo, comma, bar, right? I probably after that want to say something like self.assert, I don't know, true. What did we do before? We did, all right, let's even do that. We're not even going to be creative, right? That's what we want to check. You guys agree?
Yep.
So in other words, I don't want this to throw a failure at me. I don't want it to throw a failure. I don't want it to throw an exception. I don't want it to do anything. I don't want this thing to think. I don't want it to decide whether it's good that I authenticated or it's bad that I authenticated. I just wanted to, if I authenticated, create a header with a token. And if I did not authenticate, not to create a header with a token. But I still, regardless of what happens, just want the response. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? So yes. I still want the response. I will decide whether to pass or fail the test here in the test. But the actual function, the only thing it should think about is, do I have a token? Great, I have a token. Let me create a header. Oh, I don't have a token. I'm not going to create a header. That's all I want this function to do. I don't want it to do any other kind of thinking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to extract this token. And then over here, before I create my header, I'm going to say if my token exists, right? Then create a token. Or I'm sorry, then create a header. But if the token doesn't exist, just return the response and keep on going with your life. Make sense what I'm trying to do?
Ellie, I received unauthorized 401 when I called to verify endpoint, like with your latest modification. Can you please show again how you call, like from test file, do you call requests like post or like session? How you call from, not from, sorry, from endpoints file, like
I do session. I do session.
Yeah, session, this is like your class which has endpoint information. And yeah, and in this class, in authentication class, how you call it? Session post. Okay, this is my mistake. Session post, not request post. Okay, thank you.
If we keep saying requests, we're not taking advantage of that stored stuff.
Right, exactly. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so one more time, let's go back to where are we going back to my test, right? So here we added this if, right? Now, what I have to remind you guys, or if you didn't know this before, to tell you guys, is in Python, not just false means false, okay? Emptiness also means false. Zero also means false. None also means false. So here, I'll use the Python console to show you guys what I mean. All right, so I'm just gonna close this and open a new one, hold on. All right, so I say something like if none, right? You guys understand what none means, right? If none print, I don't know, hello. After I press enter, what do you think is going to happen? Is it going to print hello or not? Nothing happens because none is nothingness, right? And that means in Python it's false. So this print statement will only print if this condition evaluates to true. So in other words, if I do the same code again and I say true, right? And I say enter here, see, prints hello. You guys see that? So same code. If I say if true, print hello, it prints hello. But if I put if none, nothing happens. Similarly, if I use exactly the same code, but instead of true, I put empty space, right? Or not empty space, empty quotes. There's no space in there, it's just empty, right? Same thing, nothing happens. So when there is emptiness between quotes, it's treated as false. You don't have to actually write a statement in Python saying, if this equals empty space, right? No, it literally, like, by it being empty, it's immediately evaluated to false. Similarly, if I do exactly the same code, but I put 0, 0 is treated as false. Okay, see that? But if I put 1 or -1, let's even do negative. Oh, sorry. I should have pressed enter. -1, enter. That's not nothingness, right? 0 is kind of like a neutral nothing. -1 is actually something. So it's treated as true. Similarly, if I do a space, right? A space, not completely nothing between quotes, but like a space, like a white space is something. It's, oh, come on. I'm pressing all the wrong buttons. That's treated as true as well. So in Python, none, nothing between quotes, 0, and false, all equal false. That's why when I go here, I can say things like if token, because if token came back as none over here, this will evaluate to false. If token came back as an empty string, like the string, but there's nothing inside the quotes, it will still evaluate to false. All right, so this should be good enough. And we can actually experiment one more time.
But if it is a space, then it's a problem, right? It will go run, but there is nothing there. If it is just one space.
Right. So.
But maybe that will never happen.
I did something wrong somewhere. Hold on. What did I do? Interesting. All right, you guys, hold on. Let me experiment with something. Because before it did a different error. So we might need to move up our if statement. One sec. Bear with me. Oh, by the way, I should show you this. So you see how I'm in debugging mode right now? And I'm paused. Over here, next to all these other awesome buttons that I already showed you how to use, there's this calculator looking icon, and it's called evaluate expression. So if you click on it, what it does is it plugs you in immediately into the code. So you can actually run expressions here, and it will run them as if they're part of this code. So you can actually try stuff out. So you can do things like, or in fact, you can even do this. You can say right click and evaluate expression. Same thing when opens, all right? Same thing. So same icon. But if you do here, you can say things like this. Nope, still gives us an error. Sorry, working some magic here. Okay, we can do that. All right, so just to explain, when I say JSON parsed, right here, as you can see, it's a dictionary, but token doesn't exist inside, right? Token doesn't exist. And so unfortunately, when I try to retrieve a token from JSON parsed in order to run this if statement, it still fails because there's no token. It's not that it gives us back none, it's that just there's no token. So the dictionary starts screaming at us saying, I don't have it. So instead, there is another option. In Python, there is a function built in. It's actually called get attribute. All right, and does exactly the same thing as this, only in a safe way. So if you use get attribute and you pass in the object that you're trying to get an attribute from and the name of the attribute, it also gives you an option of what to do if that attribute is not found. So in other words, and you already saw me write this code, but I'll write it again. This same statement will get replaced with token equals, right? Same statement, get attribute. And as you can see, as soon as I start typing it, it auto-completes because it's built in. It's not something you even have to import as a package. It's a built-in. It's such a common function. It's so important that it's part of the Python built-ins out of the box. So you get attribute, and if you look at it very closely, see it says underscore underscore O. That's not very good object, not very good parameter name, but essentially it means you're going to pass in your object here, and then the name of the parameter you're trying to take out, and then the default, right? So in other words, if this thing is not in there, what should you get back? So I'm going to say get attribute, and then the object, right? See, it's telling me, oh, my object is JSON parsed, right? That's what it is right here. And then the next thing it's trying to tell me that I need to pass in is the name of the attribute I'm trying to extract. So that's token. All right. And then again, if you look at it, the third thing is the default. So in this case, I'm going to say if there is no token inside this JSON parsed dictionary, then it should just return none. So then my if statement will still work. So say if none, or you can do something like false if it makes you feel better, like false, right? So then if token is false, don't do this part, just return the response. Okay, does that make sense what I just did? Hopefully. So now when we run this, come on, let me run you. Okay, I have to rewrite my test, but that's already not my code. That's just me being too fast.
It's probably the same problem. This authenticated attribute doesn't exist in the response.
Right, no, that's what I mean. Like I copied, right? I copied from the previous test, so I was copying and pasting. That's why I'm trying to fix it right now. There we go. Again, you guys, I'm creating these tests on the fly, so. Okay, test passed, good. Again, the test in this case is not important. I created it only for debugging purposes, but now you know. So if you use the authenticate function, right, with invalid credentials, it will not create a token and it will not fail. It will just return a response. And then what you do with that response is up to you, right? You can just ignore it, or you can check that there is a message, whatever. It's up to you what you do with that response. But if you pass in correct credentials like we did here, it should be able to perform the verification without you having to extract the token on your own or adding any additional headers. It will just do it automatically or automatically, right? Cool?
Can you repeat a little bit again about the negative scenario when it's not the welcome but something else?
Yeah, I will do better than that. I'm going to set a breakpoint and we're going to do it step by step. Okay, so I'm going to walk inside this function, see, authenticate, and we can see that our email is foo, our password is bar. So obviously they're not correct. We are going to do one step in. We're going to get back our response. Our response is, well, first of all, it's 400, but we don't care because there is nothing inside our step that actually says, oh, it has to be 200, right? Nothing. Our test can do that, but our authenticate doesn't have to, right? It doesn't do that. But our response does contain other stuff. So we are going to go ahead and parse that content, right? We're going to parse it. We're going to get back a dictionary. Wait. Yeah, okay, correct. I'm going to parse that dictionary. And then what we're going to try to do is we're going to safely try to see if there's a token, safely. We're going to do it by using the get attribute command. Again, special command that tries to extract a certain, and it can be used on dictionaries or objects, tries to extract an attribute. So in this case, a key, right, from our dictionary. And if it doesn't find it, it will assign this default value instead. So right now, after I do this step, because there is no token inside our JSON parse, right? So as you can see inside JSON parse, we only have error message, right? So no token. We are going to get false deposited into this token instead. So here we go. I'm going to do step. Now, as you can see, token is false, right? You guys see that? And then after I do another step, it skips over this portion. So there is never a token or a header, authentication bearer header created because we never authenticated properly. And so all we do is we just return that response that we got at the very beginning that contains all this stuff, right? We just return this guy. And our test will determine what to do with that response. But we have not added that header.
Okay, so like token returned inside the RESP object?
No, there's no token at all because we did
no,
not.
I mean, in case of positive test, it's token inside the RESP, or it's nothing, no token.
Let's do positive one as well. All right, so that's a good question. So let's do the positive one, right? I'm gonna do exactly the same thing, step by step. So I'm gonna put my breakpoint here and run it. All right, so here we go. Let's go in, right? I'm gonna go in. We have our proper credentials, our username and password. We're gonna execute our session and we get back response 200. Okay, that's already good. Now we're going to parse our content and we can see that inside it we have authenticated, token, and then some other stuff. So we know that when we do get attribute and we try to extract token from JSON parsed, it will use the value. We don't have to use the default because there actually is a token for us to use. So when we do this, token gets assigned. It's no longer false. It's not none. It's a value. So when we say if token, it's going to evaluate to true because yes, token exists. Wait, what? Hold on a second. I know it works. I'm just not sure why it did that. Not sure why it showed it so weird, but here, I'll show you here that it added it. No.
It was inside the store. No. There's a user.
I don't know why it did that. That's so weird. What happened?
It says token false at line 20.
Why? There is a token. I can see it. That is so weird. Okay, hold on, you guys. I don't know. Something is wrong with my logic here.
We can, because it's a dictionary, we can use what's the phrase? In dictionary function when we figure out if a key is available in dictionary.
Yeah, we could.
Can we use that, right?
But why is get attribute not working? Okay, fine. All right, workaround number 2.
Can it be that when you run all the tests, this invalid login actually overrides our headers in session? No?
No, because we are creating a new session here.
Oh, okay.
It's not created in setup. It's created here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just hold on a second. Trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong. What did I just do? Sorry, guys. I know we can do the dictionary.keys and check that if it's in there, but I'm trying to see if there is a smoother way. And at the same time, trying to see why get attribute is not working. It's either something between Python. My connection is very slow. You know what I'm gonna do, you guys? Okay, I think we all understand the logic, and it's almost 10:30. So I'm going to say, this is the end of the class. I'm gonna massage this a little bit and fix it, and I'm gonna push the code, all right? But essentially, this is it for today. I really wanted us to get to HRM, but we kind of ran out of time. So what I'm gonna do is starting on Thursday, starting the very beginning of the class, we'll do our HRM example where we actually do the CSRF token extraction, and we'll do the beautiful soup and everything. So I promise. And additionally, I was also asked, and you guys heard this at the beginning of the class, to show you how to use parameterized annotation by extracting from files. So something like a CSV file. So I'll show you that as well. So we'll build a parameterized example with a CSV file against HRM. Is that a deal?
Yes.
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 I'm really sorry. We ran out of time. I was hoping to cover more today, but it is what it is.
Ellie, so I started to debug this issue, and it looks like that even in positive case, like JSON parsed have this token, but then this get attribute function returns none for some reason. Returns token none. So I put breakpoint in this authenticate function, and
so apparently it's just a difference in what like different Python versions. So instead, here's what we can do here. Okay, if you guys you want me to finish doing it with you, it's just going to be dictionary.get. All right, and then you just say, here, we'll try this. I don't know if it's going to work because I'm trying all these different options, but it's not dictionary. Sorry, not dictionary. JSON parsed.get. And then we're going to say token and comma false. So maybe that's going to work for us. Hopefully. Multiple workarounds, but one of them is bound to work, right?
Sorry.
Okay. So we're gonna step in, walk, walk, walk. Now it works. Okay, good. So so let's do this one instead. Okay, so I'm gonna delete that part. So please replace that other portion with a JSON parse.get, and we're just gonna put a false next to it.
also none basically also.
Oh, you can do none. I actually originally did none, but then I figured some people would like to have false as a better option. None would work just the same.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So since I finished debugging this, I'm going to go ahead and commit my code now.
Could you explain that line number 20? What is this JSON parse.get and then to thing?
It's just another way to safely take out that key. All right. So JSON parsed is a dictionary, and one of the methods that it provides is get. And so a dictionary has this method .get. And so it's the same kind of situation. I'm trying to see if there's a key called token, and if there's none, this will be the value it uses. So this will be what it will assign into the token variable. So same thing we did before, just another way. So we have to realize that in coding, there's never really one way to do things. There's always 20 different paths you can take to get the same thing done. This is exactly the same thing to get the same thing done. That's all.
But it's interesting why that get attribute was failing.
Probably just the differences between Python versions, and now maybe dictionary is no longer considered an object, I would think, maybe. So now we just do dictionary.get. It's fine. It's not a big deal. So as Python evolves, 2.7, 3.1, 3.2, 3.6, 3.8, they do different modifications on things. And so it's fine. How are you guys doing? Okay. Any more questions? Stop recording. Nobody wants to talk.
Making more sense. Thank you.
So since nobody wants to talk, I'm going to go ahead and commit my code. How's that? and you guys can pull the changes. So here we go. I'm gonna say git status, so you guys can all see. Actually, hold on. Let me remove this one. All right, git status, right? So we have our stuff, my test and param API tests. Change there.
Should we do git fetch first or just git?
After I push, you can do git fetch after I push, but I'm trying. What did I change here? What did I change? I don't know what I changed. Okay, hold on. Git diff. What did I change? Okay. Well, that's so obvious. What did I change? Oh, that, okay. I remember that one. All right, so git add, I'm gonna add everything. Git status again, just to make sure I added everything. Interesting. Okay, we'll figure it out later. Git commit message class number 3 using request sessions. Push. And it should be there. Okay. So now it should just be there. And I wonder why this is not. Did we add lib? Oh, of course we did.
Lib slash.
Yeah, lib is inside ours. So
that was maybe why it's not moved properly to the lib.
Yeah, so it's okay.
To change the name.
You guys don't pull yet? Well, it's okay. It's fine.
Oh, dear.
So I really should have called it API lib. Or I can remove it from here, whatever you guys want. I can remove it from my git ignore or
API lib also in exclusions.
Oh,
because we changed it after that.
Line 17.
Fine. I don't know what to call it then. Everything is in exclusions.
Endpoints, no?
Okay.
I think it's changed in git ignore after you refactored that.
No.
Oh, right.
Oh
my God.
This is weird.
That
Wow.
is so crazy. Thank
Wow.
you.
This
I clicked the wrong button, and that's why it's in my git ignore. Okay, hold on.
This is so weird.
I'm gonna keep it as lib, but thank you for seeing that. I would have been like, okay.
So refactor was too smart this time.
Oh, it wasn't refactor. It was my git and my PyCharm.
No, basically when you say refactor, it looks in all the places, right, where it can find it. So it found it where you didn't expect it.
Ay, ay, ay. All right, good. Git commit -m.
So how come now this lib is not in that git ignore? What happened?
I don't know. I must have clicked something wrong. Unfortunately, while I'm, talking to you guys and like showing stuff,
yeah, hard to keep
up
it.
And I just kind of click them and get rid of them. Sometimes I
Sure.
click the wrong thing. All right, so just one more push. Sorry.
And now we should do git fetch, right?
Yes, now you should do git fetch.
And okay, yeah, I see now. What?
And you should see that I made
Oh, I see so many branches now.
everybody pushed their homework, and that's fine.
And what should be next?
And then do you want to pull my code into your master, or do you want to pull my code into your own branch?
What's usually, how usually do when people work in the team? And
Workspace, you will create your own branch.
I did. I have my own branch.
Right? And you're gonna check. You're gonna switch to your branch, right?
It's Git branch, right? Git branch.
Git checkout branch. No.
Git checkout, yeah. Git
and then your branch name, right?
Branch. I think I'm already here.
Basically here, right?
Git checkout branch.
And then you just do git rebase origin master.
Oh, git rebase. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. If you guys forget, remember it's here in the README.
Yeah.
And then also I did put git usage in there that we created together, right? I did put it in there. So now, unfortunately, I don't know why things are twice in here. Don't know why, but it is what it is. So.
Eli, can I ask you some advice not directly related to the class, but related to test automation?
Sure. So let me stop share and stop recording.
Thank you.